I'm name is Jacob, and welcome to another episode of Uncut on the Abrasive Conversations platform. You must probably click on this video because you see an interesting thumbnail, something to do with wealth distribution in South Africa, something to do with rich. So you came here because you have a big interest, and for that, I would like to thank you. So let me not waste your time. Let me get into the episode. So the episode is about the South African budget. We are currently in a deadlock when it comes to the budget, and we do not know which way it's going to go. So there is no consensus on what the budget is supposed to look like. So I made a previous episode already about the South African budget, but the one thing that I think that most of the politicians in government are missing, political parties are missing, and even some civil organizations, is that the budget doesn't address wealth distribution in South Africa. Now, this is an important point because a lot of people might respond to this and say, but what does wealth redistribution have anything to do with the budget? It actually has everything to do with the budget, because if you have a society that is extremely unequal, then it means that if you don't tax the rich much more, then the lower levels of society, or proportionally, I'm talking about proportionally, if you do not tax the rich in the same proportional levels as you tax the lower levels of society, then you get a budget that more and more is going to turn into a deficit. So meaning that the government is going to get less and less money. And if the government is getting less and less money, it means that they have to go and borrow money somewhere. So this is literally where we as a South African society is. Over the past couple of decades, the gap between the rich have increased. I think in the early 2000s, Mbeki already mentioned this. So I think it was a Nelson Mandela lecture. And at that lecture, he warned not just the party, the ANC, but the majority of the South African society, that the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer. And today we are exactly here. Now, Thabo Mbeki are able to make a diagnosis like this because he's a common economist by training. So he could see where this is going. So if you do not tax the rich proportionally the same as you tax the middle class, the working class, and the poor, then it means that you are not getting enough money into the budget to deliver the services. Now, in South Africa, we have a big welfare component. And that welfare component is actually a wealth redistribution measure that we put in place since 1994. And we need that wealth redistribution proportion so that the people that were disadvantaged during colonialism and apartheid can get better futures for their children. So that is what the budget currently is missing. There is not a clear plan for wealth redistribution in South Africa. Now, it's a conversation that South Africa government and especially the political parties need to have with citizens like me and you. It's a conversation that they need to have, that where do we as a South African society would like to go? Do we want to be in a South Africa where there is a big gap between the rich and the poor? Now, if I'm a rich person in South Africa, I would like that, because then I know labor is cheap and it would increase my wealth and my surplus value in South Africa. So as a rich person, that would be a good thing for me. But the rich is only a fragment of the larger population of South Africa. But this small fragment also have most of the wealth of South Africa. So they can cause havoc on the South African society. So if we drastically put economic policies in place, that threaten their wealth, then they might leave with that money, and it will lead to rapid economic decline. And we don't want that, because it's going to affect the poor, the working class, and the middle class. So what is then the solution if we are held hostage by the rich? So many Marxists and people on the left would say a revolution is necessary. Yes, a revolution might be necessary, but I don't think we are at that point in our society. We are getting there, but slowly, and that revolution would be a result of the frustration of the large majorities of South Africans who are feeling the economic pressure more and more. Now, just before I finish this episode, I want to share something personal with you. So I do not have a car. Anything that I talk on this channel about, I experienced firsthand. So if I talk about farm workers, my family are farm workers. I come from grew up on a farm, so I know the struggles of farm workers intensively. So I use public transport, so it means that I need to take a taxi to get to work. So if I take a taxi, I have to go through a intersection where there's a lot of taxis coming in, and at this taxi rank you would see a lot of fruit vendors, people who are selling socks, people who are selling food. So you see different types of vendors at this particular intersection. And then surrounded by them is big businesses. So you have these two economies literally in a space of a radius of 100 meters, two different types of economies. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that 200 meters away from the intersection, the public transport intersection, you see queues that are longer than 200 meters. People standing in queues not for home affairs, but to go and borrow money with their SASSA grants. So that's the reality that we are currently facing in South Africa, that the poor and the working class are under debt. They're totally drowning in debt. And if they are drowning in debt, which are the large majority of South Africans, at one point they will not be able to pay that debt. And if they get more frustrated, then the next thing is protest marches. And that is a fertile ground for any type of revolution. So that is where South Africa is. Now, I know that the politicians that is sitting in government, I know that the rich who are getting their money from various types of assets, from bonds, from the stock, they don't see this image. And this is the image that I would like the politicians and the people watching this channel closely have to pay attention to. And that's the image that we have to do something about. We can't have two economies in a radius of 100 meters. And we cannot have the large majority of people borrowing money so that they just can get by, so that they can just survive. Buy toiletries, buy groceries, buy shoes, buy food. We cannot have that. So the social, even though we have a social welfare system, that is not even enough, because I've closely read what is needed to get that loan. And on top of the requirements is that you need to come with your SASSA card and your ID. So it means that the majority of people standing in that queue are people who are receiving grants. So even the grants are not enough. So what do we do, South Africans? What do we do? I would say it is time to start a conversation on wealth redistribution in South Africa. And I would like our government to consider over the next decade to proportionally tax the rich more, so that there is a level of wealth redistribution in South Africa, so that there is less pressure on the middle class and the working class who is currently feeling it. We don't have to do a drastic increase in taxing the rich and the wealthy, but we can gradually do it over the next decade. So the problem that we're facing is not a problem that we can fix today. It is a problem that will take some time to fix. And that is why I'm saying we have to have a longer view. To tax the rich over a decade and even more, up until we get to a specific ceiling and we say we cannot tax the rich more than this, because then it will affect their bottom line and the profits that they're making. But I'm not comfortable, and I hope that the majority of South Africans are also not comfortable living in South Africa that has two realities. A reality where the rich can live in a lot of comfort, and where you have the vast majority of South Africans who are surviving day by day. That's not a reality that I'm comfortable. And I know a lot of people who are still standing in that queues are people who participated in the liberation struggles. And that is a slap in their face. Even that people who passed away, it's a slap in their face. It's something that we have to do. And we cannot accept this anymore. Now, finally, someone said, but Jacob, what about the people who are busy with corrupt activities? What about the corruption? What of the expenditure and the wastage? I recognize this. And it's one of those issues that we have to do something about it. We have a court system where we're giving attention to that specific problem at this particular point in time. So there's a lot of energy to combat corruption and wasteful expenditure in South Africa. There is not a lot of energy and there's not a lot of conversation about wealth redistribution in South Africa. And that is the other conversation that I would like to have. So I do recognize that there is wasteful expenditure and corruption in South Africa, and they do affect the budget. Another thing that do affect the budget is the size of government. So all of those things needs to give attention to. But if we reduce wasteful expenditure and corruption, and if we reduce the government size, we still have the gap between the rich and the poor at huge levels. So structurally, there's something wrong with the South African economy, and we can only gradually adjust it over the next 10 years to get to a more equal playing field. So I think that is at the heart of the problem. So even though there's corruption and the government size is big, the heart of the problem is that we have to do something about the South African economy, and we gradually have to tax the rich so that there is wealth redistribution in South Africa. So that is what the budget is currently missing, and that is the economic planning of South Africa is missing. So that's something that they have to consider. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I will see you guys in the next episode.